On today's episode, I'll get into numbers 6 through 10 on my current Chicago Blackhawks top 10 prospects list, and I'll also discuss whether Samuel Honzek could be the pick at number 19. All that and plenty more right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? Welcome on into another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today is Thursday, June 22nd. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you could also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And real quick, just a reminder that you can subscribe to the channel on YouTube, or you can follow along for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Make sure to go and do that real quick, folks. It helps me out greatly. I'm on the road to 1,000 subscribers right now, and also that way you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. I also wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Make sure to go and download the FanDuel app because new customers can get a no-sweat first bet of up to $2,500 with their first bet. All right, good morning, everyone. As always, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. And thank you all for making the show your very first listen here to start off your day. For the opening two segments of today's show, let's get right into the good stuff, folks. I'll be breaking down numbers 6 through 10 on my Chicago Blackhawks summer 2023 top 10 prospects list. And for those of you who might have missed it, make sure to go and check out my honorable mention show that I dropped yesterday. As just kind of for shits and gigs, I ranked the honorable mentions, the prospects that didn't quite crack my top 10. I ranked them in order from 20 to 10. So go get all caught up on that right now on the channel. You don't want to be missing out on the honorable mentions before jumping into the top 10. You got to hear who I have between numbers 10 and 20. So make sure to go and do that. You can easily do so by checking out the channel. I got playlists that are easily accessible for you to find videos on anything, any certain player, any certain topic. Very easy to find. And while you're there, make sure to smash that subscribe button for me as well. I greatly appreciate all of that support. But without further ado, drum roll, please. Getting into my summer 2023 top 10 prospects list, starting things off here at number 10. And I guess, again, before I do dive right into this is something that I mentioned yesterday, but for those of you who may have missed it, it's tough ranking, a top 20 list or a top 10 prospects list. And everyone out there is going to have different feelings about a certain player. They're going to have different orders. So if you have a large gripe with one of my selections, listen, most of these kids have never played professional hockey yet. This is just how I view them at this very point in time. There's going to be a lot of variance with this list. It's just kind of one thing I wanted to put out there and let everyone know that we're really kind of splitting hairs with most of these kids and really a lot of them here, even into the first couple of the top 10. You could kind of flip them around any way that you wanted to. But for me personally, starting things off at number 10, I have none other than Gavin Hayes, a third-round pick for the Blackhawks in the 2022 NHL Draft, the 66th overall pick, and he was actually the first of three selections that they made in the third round. They took Hayes with the 66th pick, they took Samuel Savoy with the 81st pick, and then they took overager Aiden Thompson with the 90th overall selection. But the Blackhawks actually got this pick from the Montreal Canadiens along with the not the 7th overall pick, the 13th overall pick, which turned into forward prospect Frank the Tank Nazar, baby. But that was, a package deal that the Blackhawks got during day one of the 2022 NHL draft when, funny enough, the draft was actually in Montreal. I remember Gary Bettman going out on stage and saying, I have a trade to announce, and the fans start booing, and he's going, oh, you're going to want to hear this one because it involved their Montreal Canadiens, and it also involved our Chicago Blackhawks, as Chicago sent former number 3 overall pick in the 2019 NHL draft, Kirby Dach, to the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for pick numbers 13 and 66. So essentially we know now it's Kirby Dach for Gavin Hayes and Frank Nazar. And I'll tell you what, this looks like it could be a very solid trade. I wasn't in love with quitting on Kirby Dach that early, but this is a very solid return. And what Gavin Hayes has become with this 66 overall pick just 1 year after being drafted certainly aids in that as well. I think it could shape up to be a very good deal for the Blackhawks. As tough as it was to see Kirby Dach get traded that early into his Blackhawks tenure, there was a new general manager in place. He wasn't the one that drafted him, kind of decided to go in his own direction. And I can't blame Kyle Davidson because he's been really good at doing that so far in his tenure as GM. But for Gavin Hayes, he's a 6'2", 178-pound right-handed winger coming off a really impressive season for the Flint Firebirds of the OHL, where he tallied 41 goals and 40 assists in 66 OHL games. And he only had 49 points in 65 games the year prior during his draft year. So we saw him jump up from 19 goals to 41, also added 10 more assists and just one more game's worth of action. And because of that uptick in goal scoring, Hayes really kind of took the OHL by storm. He was nominated as the hardest shot in the OHL, one of the best goal scorers in that entire league. So what an ascension it's been from Gavin Hayes in these last 11, 12 months since the Blackhawks drafted him. And like I said, if he continues to rise through that rankings, this trade, same with Frank Nazar, is only going to look better and better and better for the Chicago Blackhawks. So super excited to keep up with Gavin Hayes this next season. He did actually end last year once Flint's season came to a close. He did sign an amateur tryout with the Rockford IceHogs, maybe showcasing that, they were just wanting to give him some action and he could be ready to do the same and actually play in games after the conclusion of this year. But Hayes is expected to return for his third season with the Firebirds. He is 19 years old though. So after this season, it wouldn't be too surprising to go and see him sign his entry-level contract. Hopefully he can be a two-time 40-goal scorer coming out of junior hockey when he's ready to make that jump to the pros. So I have Gavin Hayes starting things off here at number 10. Coming in at number 9, I have none other than physical defenseman. I guess not physical, but large, sizable defenseman in Isaac Phillips. 5th-round pick for the Blackhawks in the 2020 NHL Draft after spending 3 seasons with the Sudbury Wolves of the Ontario Hockey League. 6'3", 195-pound defensive defenseman. But there's been some interesting developments with Isaac Phillips these last couple of years, especially for being a 5th-round pick not all that long ago, right? And one thing I think that kind of actually aided in his development, getting excelled or getting sped up a little bit, was the COVID lockout that impacted the OHL because Phillips wasn't going to be playing any OHL games with Sudbury. He actually made the choice to go and play some games with the Rockford IceHogs at the end of the season, and he wound up appearing in 27 games, and that might have kickstarted his development a little bit and really put him on the right track, because the following season, he kind of unexpectedly made his NHL debut in the fall when the Blackhawks were dealing with some injuries. He ended up with 25 points in 64 games during his first full AHL season. And then most recently, he spent 16 games up at the NHL level this past season with the Blackhawks, recording his first NHL goal, adding 4 assists, and all in all, playing really solid, showing improvements. And quite honestly, if the Blackhawks weren't in the situation they were in, where they were trying to lose down the stretch, Isaac Phillips, no doubt about it, could have been a regular NHLer there in the second half of the season. And that's kind of the expectation we have for him going into next year. He's going to be trying to make that full-time leap, and I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be in the Blackhawks starting lineup. I think he's really rounded his game out these last couple of years. We knew he had the size, but he's finally starting to play with a little bit more of a mean streak, and we've heard Coach Luke Richardson say he'd like to see that even more out of Phillips moving forward. Starting to take advantage more so of that size. And he's also added a little bit more offense to his game while developing in Rockford these last few years too. So I think from all accounts, Isaac Phillips should be in the NHL to open up next season. I know it's a little bit of a numbers game, and There might be an odd man out of the group, but I think his game is ready and translates to the NHL level. Would like to see him continue to play to his strength and his size, but he's still only 21 years old. He'll turn just 22 in September. And again, for being a fifth-round pick in 2020, you have to be happy with this development of Isaac Phillips in these past couple of years. So yeah, Isaac Phillips coming in at number 9 for me. And then at number 8, I have Ryan Green, second-round pick, 57th overall in the 2022 NHL Draft. The second-round selection that the Blackhawks made. Kind of interesting that Paul Ludwinski was the one that went 39th overall. I just don't think of him as having necessarily the highest ceiling, and being, the 7 picks removed from the first round is a little bit interesting to me. But Ryan Green feels like a very solid value pick with the 57th overall selection. The Blackhawks actually got this pick from the trade with the Minnesota Wild that involved Marc-Andre Fleury back at the 2022 NHL trade deadline. And of course, had Minnesota gone on to reach the conference finals, this pick would have turned into a first round selection. So who knows what would have happened there if the Blackhawks had that pick in the first round. But Green, 6'1", 175-pound forward, tallied 31 points, 9 goals, and 22 assists, and 39 games as a freshman for Boston University this past season. A really impressive freshman year at just 18 years of age. He was coming off a 51-point year in 59 games, 19 goals, 32 assists for the Green Bay Gamblers during his draft year. But to go and see him kind of put up essentially the same offensive numbers, right? He was a little bit less than a point per game player in the USHL. To go and see him be at that same clip as a freshman playing against, grown men at the collegiate level was undoubtedly impressive to me for Ryan Green. He also kind of took on a third-line center role for the Terriers for a majority of the season and kind of proved himself to be a responsible two-way center, with someone who played on the penalty kill and in those defensive situations. I mentioned 6'1". He's got some good size to him. Also a pretty good skater. So all around, there's a lot to like here with Ryan Green, and to see him do what he did offensively too as a freshman in college was really impressive to me. So I'm excited to see Ryan Green continue on this path here with Boston University, probably the next 2 years, if I had to guess. He will turn 20 in October, but he is going to go back for at least his sophomore year. Wouldn't be too surprised with the patient approach the Blackhawks are going with if he wound up playing 3 years of college hockey and then signing his entry-level contract, but he should play an integral role for the Terriers this upcoming season. Probably will get bumped up into the lineup as their second line center, something he actually, that was the role he took on later on in the season once the coaching staff gained a little bit more confidence in him. So lots to like here for Ryan Green. I also think with the defensive abilities, his skating ability, and the all-in-all responsibility and the way he plays the game, I also think there's a really good chance that he's going to be playing center at the NHL level as well. So Ryan Green coming in at number 8 on my summer 2023 top 10 prospects list. All right, folks, I will be continuing my list here in just a moment. But first, I got to talk to you all about FanDuel, and make sure to go and download the FanDuel app right now, because new customers can get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. All you got to do is go and download the FanDuel app and use our promo code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. It's baseball season has officially taken over here. The MLB is riding hot. I was riding hot there for a while as well, fading the Oakland A's until they went on a little bit of a hot streak. Fading the Kansas City Royals has also personally worked out well for me as of late. So make sure to go and download the FanDuel app right now. And again, if you're a new customer, you'll get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back if your first bet doesn't win. All you got to do is go and download the FanDuel app right now. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the MLB. All right, we're back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. Real quick, before I pick up where I left off and get into segment 2, I want to let you all know that I'm currently on the road to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. And if you haven't done so already, if you're still watching at this point in the video, first, let me say thank you very much for all of your support. It really does mean the world to me. But if you could just help me out by taking 2 seconds to click that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to the channel, it really will help me out. I'm trying to get to that 1,000 subscriber mark as fast as I can. And with Connor Bedard being coming home to Chicago in just 6 days' time, I know there's going to be a lot of new listeners, a lot of buzz around the city, a lot of new people tuning into the show. So make sure to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already. Lots of good stuff, draft profiles, top 10 prospects list, season recaps. I'm going to be looking at potential free agent fits, updates on the Chicago Blackhawks and their RFAs and their UFAs. Lots of good stuff that you don't want to miss. So make sure to go and subscribe to the channel. All right, picking up where I left off here, getting into number 7 on my top 10 prospects list is none other than defenseman Wyatt Kaiser, third-round pick for the Blackhawks in the 2020 NHL Draft. He was the 81st overall pick, 2 picks after Landon Slaggert, by the way. But the Blackhawks actually got this pick, like we've seen a couple of times already, by trade. This one actually stemmed from the 2020 NHL trade deadline when the Blackhawks sent Eric Gustafsson to the Calgary Flames for a third-round pick. Unfortunately, they didn't jump on the opportunity to trade Gustafsson for a first-round pick the year prior. His value dropped, but they still wind up getting a third for him, and that selection ended up being defenseman Wyatt Kaiser, 6 foot, 175 pounds, just tallied 23 points in 35 games, 5 goals and 18 assists during his junior season with the University of Minnesota Duluth. And he played a huge role there all 3 years he was there. Even as an 18-year-old freshman right out of high school, he was playing a top 4 role on the power play and on the penalty kill. Had a game in the Frozen Four where he played 60 minutes as a freshman. Like, Wyatt Kaiser has been playing meaningful hockey and in a meaningful role for all 3 years that he spent with the Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs. He also got an opportunity to play for the United States at the U20 World Juniors this past winter and played pretty well. He tallied 2 goals and 1 assist for 3 points in those 5 games. And then once his junior season with UMD wrapped up, he ended up signing his ELC with the Blackhawks, played in his first 9 NHL games, tallying 3 assists in the process. I love the offensive upside and the skating ability for Wyatt Kaiser. I think that's really always going to be his bread and butter. And compared to some of the defensemen that the Blackhawks have in their system on the left side, it is nice to have a guy who's a little bit more offensive minded as opposed to, Isaac Phillips, shutdown defensive defenseman, Ethan Del Mastro, Nolan Allen, shutdown defensive defenseman. You get what I'm saying here. It's nice to have some offensive upside with a guy like Wyatt Kaiser. I'm expecting that we'll see more of that in the NHL next season as he was just kind of finding his footing there late in the year. It is apparent that he is going to have to get stronger and going to have to grow and get a little bit more physical to handle his own in the defensive zone, but he's still only 20 years old. He's always been one of the younger players for his age group. He'll only turn 21 years old in July, so still very early in the development process. Even though he has played 3 years of college hockey, I'm sure the Blackhawks are going to be trying to bulk up Wyatt Kaiser here in the offseason to get him ready to be a full-time NHLer at next season, as that's kind of the expectation along with Isaac Phillips as well. And then coming in at number 6, I have goaltender Drew Commesso, baby. 2nd-round pick, 46 overall in the 2020 NHL Draft. Another selection that the Blackhawks received via trade. This one actually stemmed from the 3-way deal that went down at the 2020 deadline as well, which involved the Vegas Golden Knights, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and most notably goaltender Robin Lehner, who is in a little bit of a predicament right now, for those of you who know what's going on with him. But the Blackhawks received a 2nd-round pick, was kind of the highlight of that trade package. They also got Malcolm Subban and prospect Slava Demin, but this 2nd-round pick was really the best part of the return for Robin Lehner. And with the 46th overall pick, the Blackhawks went on to select the 6'2", 180-pound netminder Commesso. And he's been playing for Boston University these last 3 years as their starter. Most recently as a junior, went 24-8-0 with a 2.46 goals against average, .913 save percentage, and 2 shutouts in 34 games for the Terriers. He was an absolute workhorse this past season and one of the best goaltenders in all of college hockey. Helped steer them to the Frozen Four, was a huge part of their success before they did, unfortunately, wind up coming up a little bit short. But a very solid season for Drew Commesso. I mentioned he was the starter for the Terriers all 3 years and compiled a 43, 22, and 4 combined record. And one thing I also talk about pretty frequently whenever I bring up Commesso is just all the good experience that he's accumulated so far in his young career. By the way, he's still only 20 years old. Like Wyatt Kaiser, he turns 21 here in July. But for a 20-year-old kid, Drew Commesso has some awesome experience under his belt. 3 years of starting action at Boston University. Also, before he was with the United States Development Program, which has obviously been on the rise for the last decade now, and was the starter there at U17 and at U18. He also played at the Olympics and represented the United States. And by the way, played really well. 2 games worth of action for Drew Commesso, allowed just 2 goals and pitched 1 shutout in the process as a 19-year-old, maybe 20, but I think he was still 19 at the time, which is undoubtedly impressive. We've also seen him, although he rode the pine for it, we've now seen him been a part of the IIHF World Championships a couple of different times. So he's just been around a lot of high-level hockey, a lot of good hockey, and mostly he's been the starter throughout that. And whenever he's gotten opportunities, he's really made the most of it. So for multiple different reasons, I'm really excited about Drew Commesso making the jump to the professional level next season. We know he's going to be bypassing his senior year with Boston University and is expected to be part of a tandem with Jackson Stauber down in the Rockford Ice Hogs next year. Couldn't be more excited to see what Drew Commesso finally has in store for us. He's really been kind of deemed the goalie of the future ever since the Blackhawks drafted him nearly 3 years ago now. So super pumped to see Drew Commesso finally making that jump to professional hockey. All right, folks, I think that is going to wrap up number 6 through 10 in my current Blackhawks top 10 prospects list. Don't go anywhere. It's coming up in just a moment. I still have to get into forward Samuel Honzek's 2023 NHL Draft Profile. All right, before I wrap up today's show, I do want to let you all know about the giveaway that I am doing on Locked On Blackhawks. And help me out, as I mentioned earlier, I'm currently on the quest to reach 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. And when I do reach that goal, I will be having a giveaway here on the channel. And all you need to do to enter, 1, you need to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, and B, you need to follow Locked On Blackhawks on Instagram. And make sure just to take a little screenshot that shows you're subscribed to the channel. Go and DM that to Locked On Blackhawks on Instagram as well. I've been getting a handful here in the last couple of days, so great to see that people are picking up on this. I also just posted a picture of the things that I will be giving away, the things that will be involved in the giveaway, and the lucky winner will be able to select one of those items of their choosing. So make sure to go and do that real fast. Help me grow the channel. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Go and follow Locked On Blackhawks on Instagram. You'll have a chance to win some awesome free Blackhawks stuff. Who wouldn't love that? All right. Before I wrap things up, though, I do still have to get into my next 2023 NHL Draft Profile, and today I'll be covering 18-year-old prospect Samuel Honzek, a 6'4", 185-pound forward that played for the Vancouver Giants of the WHL this past season. And by the way, make sure to also go and check out my previous NHL Draft Profiles. I've gone through a slew of them already at this point, with players like Colby Barlow, Andrew Crystal, Matthew Perreault, Ryan Leonard, Matthew Wood, Gavin Brindley, Dalibor Dvorsky, Daniil Boot, Riley Height, and most recently up until today, Callum Ritchie. But getting into Samuel Honzek, a very polarizing player, one of the best combinations of size and skill in this entire draft class in my mind. He's 6'4", left-handed forward. He's played kind of both the center and the wing so far in his young career. It's not professional as of this point. And in his first season in North America this past year, he finally did come over from Slovakia. He tallied 56 points, 23 goals, 33 assists in 43 games for Vancouver. Unfortunately, he got hurt while representing Slovakia at the World Juniors, and that kind of forced his tournament to come to a close early and also forced him to miss a decent chunk of the season for the Vancouver Giants. But when he was healthy, one of the best point per game guys in the entire WHL among all draft eligible players. He ranked 6th in that category at 1.3 points per game. And as I mentioned, from Slovakia, not only that, but he's from Trenčín, Slovakia, which some of you may recognize the name of that city. That's actually the hometown of Blackhawks legend Marian Hossa. And I think the Blackhawks actually released in a video an interview between the front office and Samuel Honzek, and they mentioned that Samuel Honzek's dad is actually good friends with Marian Hossa. So kind of a cool little small world connection there. But the first thing, kind of getting into Samuel Honzek's game here now, the first thing that stands out about him, obviously, is his size. He's 6'4", but he knows how to use that effectively. He knows how to use that size to his advantage. I wouldn't say, I think one thing, as I'll talk about more, that he still needs to work on is using that size to be physical along the boards and on the defensive side of things, maybe help his team get some momentum instead of what he's best at doing right now is absorbing contact when driving to the net. That's really how he knows to use his size to his best abilities right now, because he also pairs that with some really solid edge work and absorbs the contact, likes to drive to the net. He's also like really strong on his skates, and obviously 6'4", 185 pounds. That's a big body for 18 years old. So he has that combination that he really likes to go to when driving the net. But all in all, for being 6'4", a guy of his stature, Samuel Honzek does move pretty well. Like the top end speed, the acceleration. I will say the form is a little bit awkward when you go and watch some of his clips. Yeah, it doesn't all look the best, but his skating, all in all, is pretty impressive for a guy his size. And he also pairs that with some really soft hands for a guy his size as well. He's a capable stick handler. He's got some swift movements. Not sure how much he's going to be like dancing around opponents at the NHL level, but he's doing it in juniors. And I think that's really when he does his most damage as a playmaker, is when he has those swift movements, gets the attention of the defenders around him, and opens up some space, creates some space for him to work, or creates some space for his teammates, to kind of get open. And that's when his playmaking usually comes out, and he's setting up teammates out in front of the net or finding them cutting in the slot and whatnot. I think his game is kind of just a combination, a cultivation of just everything really coming together, that edge work and being a good skater for a guy of his size, knowing how to kind of use his edges and lean on that heavy body of his, having those soft hands to dangle around some defenders. And then that's when the vision and hockey IQ, the recognition, the creativeness, how to kind of find space for himself and for his teammates that's really when it all stands out. It's a combination of all of that good stuff. I think also, while he is a capable playmaker, that, like I said, I don't know how much he's going to be dancing at the NHL level and if he's going to be swift enough at that level in order to get the job done. So I actually think it's probably his goal scoring ability that is going to be the most translatable to the next level. Now, if he continues to work on his speed and his form a little bit, I do think he has the vision, the hockey IQ, the stick handling in order to be a good playmaker. But I've really been impressed with Samuel Honzek's shot as well, mostly on the power play. I would like to see him use it a little bit more at 5-on-5, but a very powerful wrist shot, has a lot of precision, knows how to put it top shelf past a goaltender. And he also has a booming one-timer, can absolutely clap it from the right circle. And I like how he goes to the net too and cashes in on a lot of rebounds. He plays a power forward game, but he also can play a finesse game from that right circle on the power play too. So for many different reasons, a very intriguing option here in Samuel Honzek. And as you'll hear in just a second, most draft scouts project him to go right around that 19th spot where the Blackhawks currently sit. Getting into the rankings, Samuel Honzek was ranked the highest by Sportsnet. They had him at number 10. He was 16th by the Daily Faceoff, 18th by McKean's Hockey and Dobber Prospects, 19th by Chris Peters, The Hockey News, and Bob McKenzie, 20th by Elite Prospects, and 22nd by Craig Button. So for the most part, by all accounts, at least from the draft scouts that I really pay attention to, they all project Samuel Honzek to be a first-round pick, and most of them have him going somewhere in that 15 to 20 range. And of course, the Chicago Blackhawks are right there at number 19. So he very well could be available if they wind up staying home and making that selection. But getting into kind of his strengths and his weaknesses, as far as the strengths go, I think the skating, the top end speed, the acceleration, the edge work are excellent for a guy of his size. And that's maybe why I've kind of given Samuel Honzek more of a thought compared to some of the other bigger players in this year's draft who just aren't quite able to keep up. I know all bigger players are a little bit more of a work in progress and take a little bit longer to develop, but it's a positive for me that Samuel Honzek, while the form isn't quite there, NHL coaches and organizations can fix that. But for him to have the acceleration and the top end speed, that to me is notable. He also has a very strong and powerful wrist and slap shot, a good one-timer. I think he's going to be a good goal scorer at the next level. I mentioned he knows already how to play on his edges and to absorb contact. We'll get into kind of my gripes on that in just one second. But for a guy of his size to know how to use the edges and how to drive to the net the way that he does, that's undoubtedly impressive. And he also was a staple of not only the power play for Vancouver this past season, but he also played on the penalty kill for them as well. So a versatile player here at the junior level. And he also has some great hands for a big man and has a stick handling ability that I think is better than some people may expect for being 6'4". As far as the weaknesses go, number one is for sure the skating mechanics. It just looks a little bit wonky, but something I do think that still can be fixed. I also think he needs to start using his size to his advantage to lay hits defensively and to also be more involved in puck battles and along the boards. There are some times where it seems like he's a little bit more focused on the breakout and focused on the offensive side of things. Samuel Honzek has the body to be effective on both sides of the puck. He just has to want to do it. So that's what I'd like to see a little bit more out of him moving forward. I also think he can be more of an effective goal scorer at even strength. I saw a lot of his goals that he scored at 5-on-5 were via rebound. With the powerful shot that he has, I think he needs to be a little bit more aggressive and find ways to cash in and take advantage of that shot of his more when at even strength. So as far as my consensus here on Samuel Honzek, I expect him to go somewhere probably between 15 and 25 if I had to guess. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Blackhawks take a chance on him, of course, depending on who's available with the 19th overall pick. And in the Locked On NHL mock draft, based on the players who are already gone, I actually wound up selecting Samuel Honzek because I think it could be a fit. The skating ability, the size, the goal scoring, the stick handling, there's a lot to like there. And while he is a little bit of a project, the Blackhawks can afford to take a little bit of a risk, and they can also afford to be extremely patient with a player who may need to develop a little bit more. So I don't think it's crazy to say that the Blackhawks could be selecting Samuel Honzek at number 19. He's not my favorite one or favorite prospect I've broken down, but I do like his game more than, a pretty good chunk of guys that I've broken down already. I think he projects as a middle six winger. I'm not so sure how much he's going to be playing at center. With good goal scoring ability, is a guy that can for sure play on the top power play unit and also might be able to give you some time on the PK as well. So lots to like here for the Trenčín, Slovakia native and Samuel Honzek. We'll see what winds up happening with him as we're just 6 days away from the 2023 NHL Draft. All right, everyone, I think that's going to wrap up Thursday, June 22nd's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for tuning into the show, and be sure to go and follow the channel on YouTube and to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and that way you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you can also go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, it's going to do it here for the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.